Hello, friends.
Hey, mamas.
Welcome to My Invisible Disease podcast. We are here to share our struggles and hacks as two moms living with chronic illness.
Tune in and join our community as we share stories and experiences while we sort through the ups and downs of living with invisible disease.
Hey, Cassie.
Hey, girl. How you doing?
Not too bad. I had an MRI this morning where I was trapped in a tube for an hour. I'm sure some of our listeners know that experience. We've talked about feeling claustrophobic. Any experience with that?
I hate small spaces. I get the heebie-jeebies anytime somebody's doing anything in a show where they're trapped in a small space. It gives me anxiety, let alone being in the small space myself. But
I know. First they put me in and I had to come back out because I had my arms above my head, and then my arms to get in the tube like sucked tighter to my body, and I just wasn't ready for it. So we got through it with some breathing techniques and cloth over my eyes. So I probably should have been the person that got a bit of Ativan from the doctor before I did. But I made it through.
And only 2 short hours of your life.
Oh, 2 short hours of my life. Yeah. They actually got the IV in this time though. So, which is good. Yeah. Oh, being poked and prodded. And how about yourself?
I mean, less poking and prodding than normal, which is great. For me, they have basically just given up on me and thrown their hands in the air. So I had a scan, I don't know, like a month ago or something like that, where they did confirm that my sarcoid is getting worse, but they're kind of just ready to see what happens rather than creating more problems and going back on prednisone and the nightmare that crap is. So they're just kind of, let's see what happens.
It's finding the balance to support life.
Totally.
Do you take the meds and deal with the side effects, or, just wait and do nothing, right?
Well, that's exactly it. And like the interesting thing about sarcoid is it's such a unique disease. They don't really know a ton about it, but it will literally just go away on its own sometimes. So at this point, they're like, okay, well, if it starts getting worse, then we can put you onto like a puffer with steroids. So it's like a direct steroid treatment rather than the orals, because it just is so bad for your body. So we'll see. Right now, Jesus is taking the wheel, and that's all I got.
In summer. Well, we were talking.
I will say though, I feel better. We are having the best summer ever.
Yay!
Exhausting summer.
I know. Well, I'm just in contrast to last summer. You know what? It got better. Like, that's awesome. It's not perfect, but it got better, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like this time last year, we had just gotten home from vacation, and I was just about to like start like that first little bit of prednisone, and I could hardly walk, could barely get up the stairs. It was right around here where I started going extremely downhill very quickly. So I'm very excited to go for bike rides and just get to do lots of fun things with the kids this summer. So 4 weeks left. I mean,
sometimes looking back and just reflecting into like what got you to where you are right now, like it really does show the vast jump of improvement that, and the resilience. So I know this time last year I was prepping for my second transplant assessment, and now I'm getting my yearly renewal of all of the appointments. So we're a little bit overwhelmed, but it's good. We're still on track for, waiting for liver and possibly now liver and kidneys. So
oh man, just do it all while you're in there. One big upgrade.
I know. I'm like, this could either be really good or really bad. I don't have to worry about it yet. So
put it on the shelf.
Yeah, it's in the drawer.
Yeah.
So today we actually have Heather Gray coming on the podcast, and a little bit about her journey is she actually was living undiagnosed with Lyme disease for over 27 years. Her journey includes dealing with mold toxicity, cavitations, and being diagnosed with 3 separate autoimmune issues.
Yeah, I think that this is a good episode for people to listen to because of her functional diagnostic nutrition experience. It just shows that there are resources available to people, practitioners outside of just your typical Western medicine that can really help get to like the bottom of it. We kind of talked a little bit about how people are getting blood tests and their doctors are talking about them being in normal ranges. That doesn't mean it's the right range. So that was pretty interesting for me.
Yeah, and I just think, for women out there that might be suffering and have that intuition, knowing that things don't feel right, and when the Western medicine world is kind of ignoring you because everything's kind of normal. Yeah, absolutely. Like the functional diagnostic nutrition is really about optimizing the body. And I think, a little bit more focused on holistic wellness for an individual. So, yeah, really cool. I'm excited to introduce you to Heather, and stay tuned.
Hey there, I'm Heather Gray, aka the Lyme Boss. I'm a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and energy practitioner, bioenergetic practitioner. I know it's a mouthful, but what that means is I learned how to take functional lab work to get to the root causes of people's malfunctions instead of throwing band-aids at symptoms. Right?
So
I was
standard blood work, like you're sending people for standard blood work that have like, how does that
but
work?
with functional, looking at the functional ranges. So like, for instance, vitamin D, the standard ranges are from like 30 to like 65. And really functional ranges, we want it 50 to 85, 90. So even if you're in the normal range, right? So many people are like, my labs came back and I look normal, but you're not normal. They're looking for disease. We're looking for function, right? That's why it's called functional medicine. We want you optimized. We don't want you barely hanging on by a thread. So a completely different modality and a way of thinking. But I was basically born full of shit. I was very constipated at a very young age. I remember at 4, I would sit on the potty for so long that my feet would fall asleep. Also around that time, my uncle had committed suicide, and I was very close to him. And that was a really dark period in my family's life. And I think that kind of kicked off my autoimmune disease of celiac, and was eating the standard American diet. So cue, childhood trauma with some genetic predispositions, a standard American diet. And it left me to be really susceptible. It left me to be a good host, right, to getting Lyme disease when I was bit when I was 13. Because not everybody who gets bit by a tick gets Lyme disease, right? It depends on what kind of a host you are, what kind of a terrain, what kind of stress you got going on, what kind of gut. So many factors. So after being diagnosed with Lyme, it showed up about 2 years later when I started showing symptoms. And my first symptoms were Lyme knee, where my knee would just swell up to 5 times its size for no apparent reason. Migrating pain, which is like a one telltale sign of Lyme disease. Only 5 other diseases have migrating pain as far as their symptomology goes. So if you got somebody who says, it's not all in your head, right? They're not a hypochondriac. If they come in one day and they say, my right shoulder hurts today, and next day it's their left elbow, and then it's their big toe, like that's a very telltale sign of Lyme disease. But the majority of mine were
Neurological.
Neurological. Thank you. I had my first suicide attempt when I was 15, the second one again when I was 18, and multiple talks off the ledges after that. I mean, there were days I would think about suicide 15 to 20 times a day.
Wow.
And as we're recording this, I just found out that Sinead O'Connor killed herself.
I saw that.
Yeah. So her son, a couple months ago, 18, escaped mental asylum. He was on a suicide watch and he killed himself. So mental health is, near and dear to my heart. I actually just got done talking with a psychedelic person who it talks about psychedelics with mental health. Like it's a whole nother conversation, but it's such a fascinating world.
Yeah.
But so
rabbit hole for sure.
Oh my gosh, it was so incredible. But yeah, so suicide attempts, pain, gut problems, digestive problems, brain fog. So fast forward quite a few more years, and it turns out I ended up getting diagnosed with 3 autoimmune diseases. I had mold toxicity, cavitations, 100 pounds overweight. And I was going through the Western medicine model to help to deal with the Lyme. And very quickly, thank God, I figured out that that was not the way to go, right? They were just literally throwing napalm at the critters, not once taking into account how long I've been sick, how I haven't been pooping, haven't been sleeping, stressed out, eat like crap. I was drinking, I was a smoker, all the foundational things of health that really should be taken into account before you go to war with somebody's body. I was a hairstylist at the time, so I didn't even have a medical background, but I heard the founder of FDN speak on you've got to make sure your detox pathways are open, and you got to make sure your hormones are balanced, and you got to make sure, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, light bulb, that's my answer. And then that's when I decided to go through the course. When I was like at my sickest, I was also, I had my own hairstyling business in my house. And then my kid was 9. I still don't know how the heck I did it, but I did, and completely changed my life. And now that's why I do what I do.
It's interesting how many people we've met that this second act, third act, or whatever has always been fueled by their own illness and not being able to find their own answers. So they actively take it upon themselves to figure things out and help people along the way.
I tell that to people all the time. You have to become your own health advocate. You have to. Because, if I would have given all the power away to the damn doctors, I would be dead. Even though all those years I thought I wanted to die, I really didn't. I just didn't want to live like that anymore. But once I actually came to face with what felt like death, it scared the crap out of me.
Heather, can you talk a little bit about how, because you've talked about like the mental health and suicide, but how that connects as a symptom to Lyme too, just for someone that might be curious?
There's so many different avenues with that. So it's like, is it the chicken or the egg? It was probably a perfect storm of celiac disease. So we know that if you've got a leaky gut, you've got a leaky brain, right? If you've got gut inflammation, you've got brain inflammation. Lyme disease is one of the few that can cross the blood-brain barrier and also cause brain inflammation. Because of that leaky gut, I was malnourished. So even though I was eating, I wasn't getting the proper nutrients that my body and my brain needed. So now I'm malnourished. A mold toxicity, which also causes brain inflammation. So we've got more fuel to the fire, right? Then we've got trauma incidences, which causes brain inflammation. And so there was a lot of, heavy metals, the cavitation. So cavitations are infections that happen in the jaw when typically traditional dentists take out, root canals and wisdom teeth. And so I had this 2-decade-long infection in my jaw, these vessels going, right to the brain, right to your bloodstream. Oh my gosh, my cognitive decline a couple weeks before I went in and actually had that all cleaned out was insane. Like I would stutter. I would walk into a room and completely forget what I was doing. I'd be driving and stopped at a stoplight and forget where I was going. Like it was crazy scary to witness yourself literally losing your mind.
And from something that in conventional world is, there is supposed to be doing your body good, right?
Yeah, it's standard practice, sadly, and it's causing so many people to be so sick, and tens of thousands of dollars to get it fixed, out of pocket usually.
So, and my next question kind of goes back to the FDN, which is the functional diagnostic nutrition training that you took. And so what caused you, like what guided you? Was it random that you saw him speak, or was that something you were seeking out, just looking for alternatives?
No, I actually wasn't looking, because I had been looking for so long with no answers that I kind of gave up. But I've always had this passion, this proclivity for natural health. I remember when I was 18 reading books about herbs and brain chemistry and stuff like that. Granted, I didn't know enough to know that you can't eat McDonald's and take these herbs and expect your brain not to be inflamed, right? So there were some pieces to the puzzle that I had missed. So I wasn't a complete newbie. I had been dabbling for years looking at different stuff, but I was listening to Sean Croxton, and he had a podcast called Underground Wellness. And I think at the time I was trying to lose weight, and Sean Croxton was a physical therapist, and his book was called The Dark Side of Weight Loss, talking about that old paradigm of calories in versus calories out is just pure bullshit.
Yeah.
And so I was listening to him because he's like a health rebel. And then, like I said, here comes Reed Davis, the founder of FDN. And I was just like, immediately. I'm like, this is what I need. This is my next path, you know. And I had to, and at the time, the course was only like $1,500.
It's
Like,
a
it's
lot
up
more
to
now.
8,000. Yeah.
Yeah. I've looked
Um,
into it myself. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. It's an amazing course, and the recognition that you get as an FDN, like the labs that we can work with, the supplement companies, you know, and even when I was just at Cellcore's Echo conference or Mindshares conference, like the amount of doctors and then FDNs, like FDNs are showing up. Like it's brilliant. The people that I can call my colleagues, it's amazing. Even at $8,000, I would still say that it's absolutely worth it. But yeah, I was I was probably only 3 classes out, so I'm like an OG. But at the time, like I said, I had to beg my ex-husband to take it because I knew, because part of the program is you actually have to run labs on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I got to be a guinea pig. And it was incredible. All the stuff that I found. I had like blastocystis hominis, which is a common parasite for people who have pets. Right. So every time I would eat, I would swell up like Violet off of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, right? And I always felt like there was going to be an Oompa Loompa that jumped out to wheel me off because I would just bloat so bad after eating. And turns out it was that parasite that was really common with pet owners. And, you know, found out I had heavy metals and candida issues and leaky gut and, you know, all the things.
All of the things.
All
yeah,
of
my
the
cousin,
things.
she also suffers from like some autoimmune diseases like asthma, really bad eczema that comes and goes, right? And also like she's like, oh, my hormones are out of check. I can just tell that I'm just not well. So she goes to like the general practitioner and she's like, can we like run some blood work so I can see what's going on? And of course, every single thing comes back in normal range. So I said to her, well, like, let's look through this because now I'm addicted to looking at blood work. It's what I do for fun.
It's what happens when you get sick. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, well, let me see what they tested you for. This is what I usually get tested for. Let's see what your ranges are. So I'm sitting there with my results and her results, and we're kind of going back and forth. And I was looking, I was like, well, look, like these thyroid hormones and stuff that you're at like the lower end. You have a lower producing thyroid than anybody else. And maybe it's within normal range, but is it in normal range for you?
Right.
So explaining to her, like, just because it says you're not flagged doesn't mean we shouldn't look at this and like reconsider what it should maybe be at.
Well, exactly. So like I said at the beginning, when I was talking about functional ranges versus normal ranges, but then also here's a great example. Like, so when I tested myself, my hormones came normal from my doctor's blood work, right? But when I did a functional urine test or saliva test over a day and a half to look at rhythms and patterns, it was amazing to see. So this is how I explain it to people. So when you go in and get your blood work done, it's a shot in time. It's a moment in time that you get that blood work done. So when I had my blood work done, it was around 1:00 in the afternoon. Earlier that day, I had almond milk in my coffee for breakfast. And it turned out I had a food sensitivity to almonds. So that sensitivity towards almonds made my cortisol spike, which brought all my sex hormones up to look normal. But once you did that same test through a salivary test, and you would see that spike, and then you would see the drop, and then you would see it being low everywhere else. So it was just so fascinating to actually see that in real time of like, holy cow, that's what happened. Yeah. Because my practitioner at the time, she was asking me, she's like, did you eat something you were sensitive to earlier that day? She's like, because you got this really weird spike, you know, about an hour after breakfast. And, you know, what time did you get your blood work done? And it was just so cool, like a detective, you know, putting those pieces together and was like, oh, no wonder why it looked normal.
Like
no wonder almond milk makes me horny. Yeah.
Detective. I feel that's what so many people that, at least for a time being, that are unwell have to be. And functional diagnostic nutrition, I find it fascinating because exactly, you're looking at patterns, you're looking deeper. Like I've worked with functional diagnostic nutritionists, and I loved the fact that you can test. And then retest, and you can actually diagnostically see, you know, if your changes are working. But there's also that point of like intuitively, like Cassie was saying, when you feel that something's wrong and you fall into normal ranges, so many women, I think, especially when they're looking for a diagnosis, fall into that where they know something's going on that's not normal for them. And I love that this gives another avenue for testing. for people that are trying to seek out answers where the modern Western medicine might not offer that for them. So
Absolutely.
so where did your journey take you after you took your training?
Oh man, within like 3 months, I had lost 45 pounds. I was no longer bloated after eating. I was sleeping better. I wasn't, my periods got better. I mean, all sorts of things improved. And then about the 6-month mark, I kind of hit a plateau. And then that's when we started digging deeper into mold. And this was before people were even talking about mold. And it was actually Reed Davis, the founder, who was like, we're doing some research on mold. He's like, I want you to get tested for Marcons. And sure enough, I tested positive and then did the VCS test online and failed it. It's a really inexpensive, like $10, vision test that they give fighter pilots in the Air Force to see their visual acuity. And if there's inflammation on your optic nerve, it's going to reflect in how well you see contrast. Oh, wow. And so it's one that, you got to set it up. The calibration can be kind of weird, but, like I said, it's a really awesome, inexpensive test to kind of see if you're dealing with mold issues. So then peeled back that layer for a little while and started feeling better, and then hit another plateau. And that's when I found out about the cavitations, and then went through a divorce and kind of blew my life up, and another layer. And so I've been peeling back layers since 2013, but haven't relapsed in any way, shape, or form in the past 3 years since I got right back into it and really dialed in. This last time, though, I picked up trauma work. So somatic experiencing work, breath work, heart math, plant medicine, all the things, because especially with mold is insidious about turning on the alarm system. And then even once you're out of the fire, it's still saying there's a fire alarm going on. And so you got to get yourself out of fight or flight and get that nervous system reset in order to heal and stay healed. So I said, I'm going through another divorce, and, with all these beautiful practices that I have that I've been putting in place, like I'm doing amazing. Like there's not a relapse in sight, knock on wood.
I mean, losing 200 pounds of dead weight at a time really helps.
Absolutely. He's called himself an anchor, and he has been. So
yeah. Well, and it just shows too, sometimes when you can bring in some of these alternative practices, it doesn't just directly help with your health, but also your well-being in general. And it helps you navigate some of those like harder times in life anyway. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, it's really amazing, the holistic approach that it really does treat life holistically. So.
Absolutely. The last divorce, I went to drinking and smoking and partying and, promiscuous. And then this time around, I've gone deeper into my meditation, into my self-care, into my breath work. I'm getting ready to do another plant process next week, so it's just, and I quit drinking. I quit smoking years ago. So I did do a little emotional eating. I've gained like 10 pounds, which pissed me off a little bit, but in the grand scheme of things, like 10 pounds over what happened to be the last time I went through a divorce, like, I'll take it. I just joined a gym, and this 10 pounds will be gone in the next couple of weeks. So,
well, and you're probably at least reaching for healthier food options, even if you're overeating, just because you have all that knowledge now as well.
Absolutely. I've always traded up for sure.
Mm-hmm. So do you think that I'll ask you, is there a way that people can evaluate like their surroundings and stuff, like to know if they have like mold, besides like doing the blood work, but like in their homes, how do they know what's causing this mold problem? If you come home to a house that has it, how do you know?
So that's a good question. A lot of times, if you're lucky, you'll have visual mold, and people are like, "Oh yeah, the basement flooded, and there's definitely mold in the basement." Well, yeah, you need to get the hell out. Mm-hmm. Most people aren't that lucky. A musty smell, mildewy smell, that's not normal. That is actually a sign of mold. But there's some great at-home tests. One is immunolytics, little plates that you can get and set around your house. Got Mold is a guy who has an at-home kit that's been really amazing. So there are ways to test your environment to see if you're like curious of, I'm not, a lot of times it's a telltale sign. Like if you go on vacation and you feel really awesome on vacation and you come back home and you get sick, right? Like you might want to look into your home.
I just know, like, during my journey, there was a time where I was quite involved with an infectious disease specialist. And they were testing me for everything. Like, literally, the lab tech looked at me. She's like, girl, where have you been? I was like, nowhere. She thought I'd been in, like, the Congo or something for all the stuff they were testing me for. But there was definitely, I don't know if it was when everything kind of, all my meds kicked in or how it worked out, but we put down our elderly dog and he used our house as his toilet. Like he peed everywhere for years. And, you know, you get the surface cleaned, but he wasn't gone 48 hours and the carpets were ripped up out of my house. And I started feeling so much better so quickly after that. And I just couldn't help but think, like, I wonder if part of it was like the toxicity of the dog urine that literally infiltrated my home. You know, it's just one more thing on top of an autoimmune disease. You throw in some gnarly bacterias and this, that, and the other thing. So yeah, they never figured that part out. But I always wonder, I wonder if that was making a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they say squirrel pee is supposed to be really, really toxic. I had a friend who's had squirrels in her attic and they were peeing and it was making her really sick. And so she had to move out until they cleaned up the squirrel pee. So yeah, absolutely.
Interesting.
Well, and so Heather, too, just because you do work as a practitioner, like what would you suggest to someone that may be listening to your story about having Lyme and mold and, you know, moving through some of the mental health issues that you went through? Like, what would you say with your experience? Like, where would be a starting point for someone, especially when you're talking like functional diagnostic nutrition and testing, etc.?
I usually start with people. So first off, I've given my course away for free. So I made years ago the Foundations of Health, and it's all the FDN way, you know, diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, supplementation. And notice supplementation can also be treatment. And notice it's at the end, right? And it's at the end for a reason. It's because you can't supplement your way out of a bad diet. You can't supplement your way out of a crappy night's sleep. Like you've got to dial in those foundations first and foremost. You can't be focused only on treatment. And that's the thing that I'm screaming to the top of my freaking lungs every single day. I've even gone on podcasts and said that. And then they're like, and then afterwards, and they're like, so what did you do to treat? And I'm like, oh my God, you didn't hear me, did you? Like, we're not focusing on treatment. Like, no, I'm not going to tell you nothing. So starting off with that free course, beautiful. And then I just did a wonderful webinar on toxins, on how to get toxins out of your environment, off your personal care, because like any autoimmune or any chronic disease, the more bricks that we can take off your immune system, right, the better, you know, more chance you are going to be able to heal. And then from there, I usually start with these intake forms. I have 2 of them, about 600 questions total. Wow. And it's a paid consult, but it helps me to kind of tease out on whether is it mold or is it Lyme? Is it co-infections? Is it heavy metals? Is it parasites? Is it leaky gut? So that way, you know, because FDNs were kind of taught coming right out the bat to do like $2,000 worth of labs and $2,000 worth of supplements. And not everybody has that kind of money. So I've kind of learned how to tweak a little bit. And let's start with these intake forms to kind of give me an idea instead of just shooting in the dark, right, on which direction we should go. And then sometimes they don't need labs. Sometimes it's maybe just it's some advanced blood chemistry panel, you know, thyroid. But for the most part, I'm not using a whole lot of labs these days. And then, you know, go from there. But dialing in the foundations, like I've got one testimonial on my website and the girl goes, it felt like a miracle because just once she dialed in some of these low hanging fruit, right? Because people poo-poo it, especially breath work. I was one that poo-pooed breath work for years. I'm like, if breath work worked, because I breathe every gosh darn day, right? Why wouldn't I be better?
It's the only thing that got me through my MRI this morning.
Oh my gosh, breath work is so powerful.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie. I'm sitting here thinking like, yeah, I breathe too. That's cool.
Yeah. No.
Like, what is breath work? What does it do?
So it calms the nervous system, and there's all kinds of different forms of breath work. But like the one that I like to use most for people to help get them out of fight or flight and into rest and digest is called box breathing. And it's 4 breaths in, and then you hold for 4 breaths, and then 4 breaths out, and then you hold for 4 breaths. And those 4 that hold at the top and the bottom are actually even more important than the in and the out, because that's what really helps reset the nervous system. It helps get you out of that fight or flight. And so I'll have people do that 3 times before each meal, because so many people are having a hard time with digestion. And when you're in fight or flight, you're not in rest and digest. And so people who have issues with their digestion, do 3 rounds of box breathing before you eat, and do that for a week, and tell me that your gut's not feeling better and that your digestion's not getting better. Like, it's incredible. But like, I like to do,
yeah. Breathwork is amazing, Cassie. You have to.
Breath of fire. Like when I learned breath of fire, or what do they call it? Uji breath. Like,
yeah, Ujjayi breath. Yeah.
I moved emotions out of places. Like I would just start to bawl because I would trap emotions in places. And by doing that and bringing it out, like it's insane. Like, no, like I said, I used to make fun of people and their breath work. And then now I'm like, no, breath work. And so, and I put some of those exercises in this course, and I can't even, it makes me sad how many people who have done it and who have completely dismissed it. And it's like, if you would have just put what I said, just 1 freaking month, give me 1 month, right? Do what I say for a month and then tell me you don't feel better. Like, what else you got to lose, people?
And it's free, and you can do it.
And it's free
anytime.
Makes my head explode.
Yeah.
Okay. It is the middle of July. I'm going to follow up with you at the end of August. And I'm going to do this breathing thing before I eat and see how it works on my digestion.
Amazing.
You're like, challenge accepted.
Challenge accepted. There we go.
Awesome. So we have a little segment. Cassie, do you want to introduce it?
Okay. So have you ever heard of the game Marry, Fuck, Kill?
No.
It might be a Canadian thing.
Yeah.
What? You said marry, fuck, kill?
Yeah. So like, if you're talking about like a celebrity, like you get to pick like which one you would marry, which one you would kill.
Okay.
So we kind of made like our own version of it. Okay. So the first one is like marry. That would be like your tried and true like self-care practice. Cheat, because we've only said the F word 6 times, so trying to get rid of one more. So that's going to be like a guilty pleasure for yourself, something that you've kind of incorporated. And then kill, you're just over it, you don't want to hear it anymore, move on. So
scratch that.
What would you say is your tried and true marry?
I have 2.
Okay.
Coffee enemas and sauna. Like detoxing. I've become the detox queen. Or so I could just say detoxing, because it really, so many of us with chronic mystery invisible diseases usually have crappy genetics, and they're not detoxing properly. They're not pooping, right? Coffee enemas were such a freaking game changer for me in the beginning. Like, oh my God.
I took the deep dive, and I'm a coffee enema fan. Yeah.
I still do one every week. Every week I do one. And yeah, absolutely. Hands down.
I mean, when I drink coffee, it's kind of like an enema.
And it's funny that it works that way too. My parents came to visit, and they're like, "Oh, I thought," because I wasn't drinking coffee, and they're like, "Oh, you have coffee?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's for my enemas." Like, sorry guys. So anyway, but okay, so coffee's one, or coffee enemas and detoxing. What's your other one?
Cheat.
Your
guilty pleasure.
Guilty pleasure. I don't feel too guilty about anything anymore, so that's probably why I'm having a hard time answering that. Guilty pleasure chocolate, especially a good quality chocolate, probably with some coconut cream, or berries with coconut cream, but the full fat, the real stuff. Yeah, chocolate.
Fair. That's fair. And what about kill? What are you over? You don't want to hear about it. Move on.
That's a good question. Like,
and
what's one of yours?
Ex-husband.
Yeah, right. Give me an example. Like your guys.
Okay. I keep repeating this, and we're super torn about it because both of us love acupuncture, but a number of people have said, I don't want to try acupuncture again. It doesn't work for me. So
I'm not saying it doesn't work for me. I just get so anxious getting into it that it like completely loses the treatment, right? You're supposed to be able to be relaxed, let it in. You can't do it.
I know what it is. I'm over people are like, I tried the gluten-free diet and it didn't work for me. Typically, they don't actually have all the answers. And sadly, dairy and corn cross-react with wheat like it's just like wheat. And so if you're not actually going off of dairy, corn, and other grains that cross-react, you're not going to feel much better. You might feel better for a little while, but then those benefits will go away. And then people are like, gluten-free didn't work for me. And so, yeah,
Okay,
that's
what?
it.
So
It cross-reacts. And then you actually get something that's called molecular mimicry. So the thyroid tissue looks a lot like wheat tissue. So if wheat is now told your immune system's like, you are problems, you cause inflammation. Now your immune system's looking for wheat and it sees your thyroid, which looks like wheat. Now you have collateral damage. And that's where a lot of Hashimoto's comes from. Anybody with Hashimoto's, the first thing I do is take them off of grains and dairy. I reversed my Hashimoto's years ago. But it'll also, so dairy, corn, and other grains cross-react and act like wheat. So typically I put people on a paleo diet. Anybody who's got any kind of an autoimmune function going on, I put them on a paleo diet because that'll help with that cross-reaction and that, that collateral damage, the molecular mimicry. But yeah, so it chaps my hide every time people are like, so I went gluten-free, but then a lot of times what that means is they just substituted crap for gluten-free crap as well, right? And then they're like, and it didn't work. And it's like, that's not a true gluten-free diet. But so yeah, that's probably my kill.
I know having some family that are extremely sensitive celiacs, like you have no idea where the sneaky gluten is. Like, oh my gosh, soy sauce, never would have thought of it, but like, no, can't have it. Like just the sneakiest stuff. So
did you even know that in the majority, like I had Dr. Tom O'Brien on my podcast and he's huge into this. He was saying something like 60% of gluten-free products are still even testing positive with having gluten in them. And so the true celiacs, a lot of them aren't getting better. My kid is one, I am one. And for years and years and years, he was on a gluten-free diet, but he still had all kinds of gut issues. One, because he was getting cross-contamination when we ate out at restaurants. And I just switched processed crap for gluten-free processed crap, not knowing any better, right? And he was still getting cross-contaminated.
No, like our food system and the culture of food is so warped.
Is it that bad in Canada too?
Oh yeah.
It's
the same.
It's not
It's the same.
as bad. Oh yeah.
Really?
How about it? I think that we have slightly better standards from what I understand. Like our ketchup has less sugar in it. I don't know.
Yeah, because Kashif Khan from the DNA company, he's Canadian, and he talks about quite often that when he comes to America, how shitty he feels because of the food and the stuff that we allow here in our system compared to what you guys do. So I think Canada is a little cleaner than the U.S. even.
And it's still a hot fire, like dumpster fire.
Yeah.
Though. Like
yeah. I think it just depends. Like, there's tons of farmers markets. There's a lot of alternatives, a lot of other options, but there's still a lot of crap up here too.
I can't get over the shit at farmers market though. Like it's like booth chimichanga and dumplings and, just because they're making it homemade there. And I'm like, what the hell? Like my farmers market's been hijacked. It breaks my freaking heart.
Oh. I'm small town. Ours is like the neighbors are producing it. So
I wish it would go back to that. I was like, it's like booth after booth after booth of like carny food, but it's a little healthier, but it's still mostly carby fried crap. And I'm like, what? This doesn't belong at farmers market.
My mom was giving me crap for paying money for organic fruit. And I was like, well, like, who cares? Like, whatever. She's like, it's not even organic because their farm is organic, it's next door to a farm that's not. So when they spray, it all goes that way. Like, okay, well, you're not like totally wrong in that. She's like, the water runs off the same direction. So she's like, nothing is truly organic anymore.
No, not unless you grow it yourself. Yeah.
And it's still a cleaner option, Mom.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Totally.
I've run enough labs to see, I do run an environmental toxin lab from Vibrant Wellness, and I get to see glyphosate and all that fun stuff in people. And I definitely do see a difference of people who are consciously, eats more organic compared to conventional. So no, there is a difference, but she does have a point. She does have a point, but there is a difference.
Yeah. Perfect. So Heather, if someone's listening to your story about Lyme, like what is your one piece of advice that you would give to someone that's struggling with their own invisible disease? Just really projecting from your own experience, your lived experiences and the struggle to get diagnosed, because you went undiagnosed for so long. What would be your word of advice to them?
Don't give up. Keep looking until you find somebody who can give you the answers. Once you have the answers, don't wear that like a badge of honor. Don't take on that identity of the disease, and lay down the foundations of health. Like those would be like the top 3 things.
Cool. And can you share a little bit about what you're doing if someone's looking to find out more information, maybe on, functional diagnostic nutrition or the programs that you're running? Where would they find you?
The LymeBoss.com, Lyme, not Lime, but the LymeBoss.com. All my podcast is up there. Links to become an FDN is up there. Booking an appointment with me, I do free discovery calls. Getting the free course that I mentioned is on the website, first page. I also have a free cooking series, real cooking for real life, because that's most people's biggest hang-ups to getting better is, I don't know how to cook. So I took 3, Instapot, non-toxic air fryer, and a cast iron skillet, and I show you how to make delicious, healthy meals in 20 minutes or less. So lots and lots of free resources on my website.
Awesome. And we'll include those in the show notes, so there'll be easy access for anyone listening. Perfect. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Heather. We really appreciate you being on the podcast, and it's just such a nice, alternative to introduce some of these different modalities to people. You can feel stuck when you are living with invisible disease, and it's just so great to hear how you were able to get yourself unstuck. So,
absolutely.
Cool.
Thank you.
Love it. Thanks, Heather. Hey girl, we see you, and we want you to join our community where we can connect and continue the conversation.
Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at My Invisible Disease Podcast, because no one should go through this alone.
Thank you for listening, and for links, resources, or show notes, you can check us out at myinvisibledisease.com.